Hi, folks. So I just launched my coaching program yesterday. It's based on what I call the Optima Method. I explained to you what that means in yesterday's video, but in the coming days, I'm going to explain each letter one by one because it's an acronym which describes the method, and O is for observe. Observe your personal story, your current story. So the idea of the Optima Method is that if you're stuck and you're unhappy and you're miserable, you want to get out of that rut or that difficult situation, what you're actually trying to do is to change your personal story, to change the story you've been telling yourself. And very often we tell these stories to ourselves, but we're not aware of it. We're kind of self-hypnotizing, actually. So my name is Christian Maltais. I'm a musician, writer, science fiction enthusiast, YouTuber. I do a lot of things, and I created the Optima Method so I can coach you and help you with that. I built it based on my own experiences, and the core idea is that, once again, we're prisoners of the stories we're telling ourselves. So if we want to get out of that prison, that kind of self-made prison, we first need to observe where we really are, what that story is. I'm going to use an actual real-life example. I was on Reddit on R. Young, and I had a conversation with a guy. I think it's a guy, and I asked him permission to read the exchange we had because it's very illuminating, I think, about what the core problem for most people is. So I'm going to name him Carl. Because Carl Jung, so it's not his real name, but that is his real message. And as we'll see, Carl is trying to describe his problem, and he feels stuck, but he doesn't know how to get out. And there is a story there. There are real facts, but there's also a story, and a big part of the problem is that story. So what does Carl say? Again, I asked him permission, so he was cool with that. Thanks, Carl. Okay, so he says, what I mean in this context is that I am very fragile. I get easily self-conscious, nervous, I have low self-esteem and confidence, I have really low resilience. And I've tried many different things that works for a while, but eventually I always fall through the cracks, almost as if deep down I'm still a scared child with not much to rely upon. So what can you do about this? Is it even possible to gain a lot of resilience if you are this fragile? If you have any personal stories, how you did it, please share. If not, please tell me if it's even possible, because I'm not sure at this point. So yeah, and it is possible, obviously, and that was one of the big reasons why I responded to Carl, because I felt it. I recognize the feeling. I have been there. I was there for a long time. And it can definitely feel like when you're stuck in a place like that and you're trying and you're failing, it feels so real because you have real life examples, that validate, your hypothesis, which is you're broken, you can't make it. But still there's a story there. So first my response, and then we'll see where the narrative is, which is where the trap is. Okay. My response was, there are two main components to consider in your case. One is your body. If you have any unresolved trauma, which is actually very common, then that can definitely provoke some of what you describe here. Anxiety, low self-esteem, etc. We'll go into more details a bit later, but both that and trying to fix your life and falling through the cracks, as Carl says. So about the PTSD, I tell Carl that a competent practitioner of any body-based PTSD healing modality, like Irene Lyon, Peter Levine, somatic experiencing, which is what I used, and it was definitely a life changer. So anything like that will be able to tell you if you have such a trauma, like a competent person can recognize it just by looking at you, essentially, and will also be able to offer you help. I'm a big proponent of somatic experiencing, but there are other approaches. So that's the body part, my first part of my response. And the second problem in Carl's case is so the story you've built up around the situation. What I'm telling Carl here is that he has a story. This story is made up of the thoughts and emotions you're used to, among other things. And I end with, change your story, change your life. I didn't make up that catchphrase, but it's definitely true. Your current life is your current story. If you change your story, you will completely change your life, and it's doable. And it's what we're trying to do here. Okay, so Carl responded essentially that, it feels so real. Where is the story here? How do we tell the story from the real problem? How do we determine where the real issue is and how to resolve it? So first things first, okay, whenever we have a problem, okay, quite often there are two things we take for granted and we shouldn't, because it gets us into a lot of trouble. Okay, two things we take for granted in any problem. The first is the story, the unconscious story. We don't see it, we don't think it's there, we just think we're seeing real life, but we're interacting with an unconscious story. And the second thing that we're taking for granted is that we're human beings. And what does that mean? And I'm telling you this because this is how you get out. Okay, you're taking something for granted, which holds the key to getting out of your problem. Okay, so what does that mean? Short version. I mean, existentially, who knows, right? But at the very least, you have a form of consciousness, right? You're aware that I'm talking to you, and you're reacting to the world. Okay. And you have two types of stimulus, okay? Two types of things you're reacting to, like two worlds, essentially. You have the outer world, like seeing a sunset or hearing a loud noise, whatever. A lion is coming to eat you, like the outside world, right? Or tasty cake, whatever. So the outside world. But you also have your inner world, okay? And that also is sending you, we think we take it for ourselves, right? But your consciousness is reacting very often to its own inner sensations. And in both cases, okay, and again, this is super important because this is what we'll be using to get out of the problem. Okay, this is what the story is made of. Okay, because in both cases, okay, you have the outside world. Your mind sees a physical object, so it's getting sensations. It's getting like feedback. But you also have thoughts and you have emotions. So feelings, physical sensations, emotions, and thoughts, right? For your outside world, that's what it is. Inside world, it's the same thing. Okay, if you have an inner reaction, well, you have a thought that is coming up, but you'll still be dealing with that thought with the tools you have to interact with the world, which is either an emotion or a physical sensation or a thought. Okay, so it's more complicated than that, but this is again short version. Okay, I'm being quick here. And on top of that, your inner world also has your imagination, which makes you allows you to communicate with your unconscious, so that there's that whole thing. Okay, in your unconscious lies most of your stories and most of your problems. So in both cases, you have an outside thing that happens, okay, a lion or lost my job, whatever, or an inner sensation, a thought, whatever. Your consciousness has these tools, thoughts, emotions, physical sensations, and that's all it has, right? So it's trying to determine how to react with that to keep you alive. The whole thing here is to keep you alive. Yeah. What tends to happen is that emotions come and there's an emotion associated with the outside event, right? And then physical sensation and the emotion, they kind of get stuck together, again, short version. And on top of that, you have a thought, okay? You have a mental phrase or a word or something like that. And all these things together conglomerate together to create your narrative. And that becomes part of your inner world. And what happens after that is that you think you're crossing the street and you see something that looks like a lion, for instance, and you think you'll be reacting to the lion, but actually what you're reacting is to your inner story about that last time you saw a lion. Okay, lion's obviously a funny example, but as we'll see here, it's crucial for life issues like the one Carl is describing. Let's get to Carl's message, and I'll just go quickly on each part of his message. We'll see what the narrative is and what the kind of facts are, essentially, and why it's so hard to change. So first sentence, Carl says, what I mean in this context is I am very fragile. I get easily self-conscious, nervous, low self-esteem, and confidence. So what is Carl describing here? He's describing his main problem, okay? And his main problem, in this sentence at least, it's emotions. It's difficult emotions, right? And what are these emotions? Well, okay, easily self-conscious, nervous, low self-esteem, low confidence. Well, I'll spoil it for you. It's fear and shame. And that's normal because fear and shame, and also anger, which is anger is the mirror of fear. It's fight, flight. That's all it is, right? So fear and shame, they're very difficult to work with. Shame is particularly tricky because it hides and it really messes your life, shame. So what is Carl describing here? He's saying, okay, my life is a mess, and he thinks he's describing himself as a person, as a consciousness. But what he's actually describing is the problem, which is I have these emotions and they're kind of haunting me and kind of, ruining my life, if you like. So very fragile, self-conscious, nervous, self-esteem, low confidence, fear and shame. Okay. When he says fragile, it's part descriptive and part narrative. This one is a little tricky because he's trying to describe the general situation. So it's like actually a good word. I've felt fragile in my life, tough time, whatever. We've been there. Okay, we've all been there. But there's it's a tricky thing here because at the same time, it can become your identity. It can become a narrative. This idea that I am fragile, and as we'll see in the coming sentences, there's a bit of that, I think. Next sentence, he says, I have really low resilience. So this is where the narrative kind of kicks in, okay? Because what is resilience really here? Resilience is a narrative. Resilience is a collective narrative. Resilience is a story the West has been telling itself, certainly in the English-speaking world. It's a buzzword. We've been hearing a lot about it for like 20 years. There are books about it, and it describes something. It kind of, it's something good, but there's a shadow aspect to it. There's a dark side to it. And the general idea of resilience is that some people have it, some people don't. And having high resilience is good, law of the jungle, well, all these things. Yeah, some people, I guess, according to the narrative, are born with low resilience, and that's bad. But a big part of the current narrative in the West is pull yourself up in your bootstraps, and that's an American thing that comes from U.S. culture. It's an U.S. expression, but they've been not to get political, but they've been the main power in the West for like 80 years. They were the big superpowers. So they've done that by spreading their culture by internet, magazine, movies, Netflix, television, all these things. So the way they see things affects all of us, U.S. culture started talking about resilience, okay, and it's obviously a good quality to have, but it's also that collective story that's coming out from the U.S., and it's not a universal fact. Okay, it's a collective narrative. And I'll explain what I mean by that a bit later on. The core thing here, again, I'll spoil it, is that resilience is not a quality, it's a skill. Okay, resilience is something you train. Resilience is something you build up. Okay. So, yeah, and, many of the people who tell yourself to pick yourself up from your bootstraps, not a few of them have been known to come from, families where they had, something to eat every day, right? You hear very few people who've never known safety in their lives talk about that, okay? And that's because they had the chance to build it, and many people don't have that, okay? But you can, it is doable. Okay, I'll spare you the biology lesson, but you can totally do it. But the thing again is that whole I have really low resilience here, this first sentence to me feels totally like Carl is beating himself up because he's looking for the outside world to give sense to his inner experience. He's looking at what other people are saying because he doesn't know, obviously, and that's normal. We're social animals, but it's a trap, like Emerald Akbar says. This is the first falling into the narrative trap. I have really low resilience. First thing I would say is that's not true. That's just you don't need to beat yourself up about that. It's not true. What does Carl say then? Okay, I've tried many different things that works for a while, but eventually I always fall through the cracks, almost as if deep down I'm still a scared child with not much to rely upon. So this is very, very revealing. And I'll start with the last thing. It's almost as if deep down I'm still a scared child with not much to rely upon. This might feel like a narrative once again, but to me, I'm not sure, because what he's describing here, it looks a lot like trauma. Okay, and I had massive trauma, like many people. It's incredibly widespread. A lot more people have actual PTSD than we like to acknowledge, and topic for another day. But one of the problems is that we have the science now, like Levine, Ari Lyon, Gabor Mate, all these people. We have the knowledge and science to actually explain it physiologically, what's actually going on, but happening with that type of response. But it's not really, seeped in the culture yet. And, taking advantage of broken people is an industry, a huge industry. You can almost say the entire society is built on it, you see. So people like that, which is a lot of that, of people, which was me for a long time, there's a money to be made by, not actually resolving the trauma. One of the things I recommended to Carl was that find somebody who can give you an actual diagnosis. Okay, there are telltale signs by physiological responses that will tell a competent person almost immediately, like within an hour or a few minutes, just by looking at the way you respond. Competent people, trained people, will be able to tell you if you have actual PTSD and how much of what you're living, those responses are driven by that physiological response. With PTSD, I have other videos that talk about it more. I don't have time to go into the details here, but let's say a big part of it here is that it looks like that might be part of what's going on here. But crucially, and this to me is like almost really the heart of the email, I've tried many things that works for a while, many different things, but eventually always fall through the cracks. And this is really where this is why I was talking about inner world, outer world, and all this. This is why I'm talking about this, because this is a big part of where we get stuck in life. So Carl feels unhappy. He's been feeling unhappy for a long time. And this was me. I know this because I did that for a long time, like a long time. Okay. And you try different things and you feel terrible and you build up your courage, and even you have low self-esteem, and you try and it goes well for a while, and then, self-sabotage or something, seems to fall from the sky, something terrible happens and you fall right back down, and you feel even worse because you see, I knew I was a loser before and now I have double the proof. But that's the narrative. Okay. That is the narrative. Okay, what is actually going on here? Okay, is that Carl was feeling overwhelmed. Okay, this is really what it looks like here. What I mean overwhelmed is you're trying to change your life. Okay, which again means changing your story. But the reason your life is the way it is and your unconscious story is the way it is because, as we said earlier, your nervous system is trying to keep you safe. That is the whole point of this whole thing. Keep you safe, keep you alive. And what does your nervous system think is safe? Whatever has kept you alive so far. If you're alive now, it has succeeded. Mission accomplished. So that means your messed up story, which is destroying your life and your dreams, well, it's keeping you safe. Yeah. And when we change our story, we have to live a period of major emotional discomfort. Okay. And the difficulty is that is how to manage that, okay, without burning ourselves out. And there's an analogy here with physical healing, like you had the flu, for instance. Well, very often when we're very sick for a period, when we start to get better, okay, let's say you've been in bed for 2-3 weeks and you're terrible, high fever. One morning you wake up, yeah, I'm feeling great. And very often we overestimate how healed we really are. So when we wake up and we feel great, we feel like $1 million, but we still need to do some healing. Okay, we still need to take it easy. Okay, we're not there yet. We're not running on all cylinders. Okay, we feel great, but the body still needs rest and recuperation and all these things. So this is exactly the same thing. You're changing your life, okay, and you feel great, okay, because you're doing things and you're getting positive feedback, which is the essence of changing your story, is getting positive feedback and building on that momentum. That's how you retrain your nervous system and create your new story. The whole thing is that, essentially. But we tend, and I've done that a lot, we tend to overshoot, and overshooting is good, but we tend not to notice just how stressful it is, you see. And our nervous system is helping us. It's really a trooper. It's really great. Like, it's our friend. But the way it's receiving it is that there's all this change, there's all this danger. So after 3 months, it's had enough. Okay, this is too dangerous. It's too much. Let's get back to what has kept us safe. And yeah, you feel ashamed and you feel terrible, but your nervous system feels safe. And if you pay attention when you're in that, when you fall back into that rut or bad habit, there is a feeling of comfort in that because it's familiar. It's what I've always known. It's what I've always felt as myself. You see? And the difficulty here is that, okay, you now think you have outside proof that corroborates, that gives you good reason to feel ashamed. But again, it was always the shame. You see, it was always those emotions, right? And now they feel stronger because you failed, but you didn't fail. Your nervous system did its job, and it's just that you don't know how to pace yourself. That's all it is. Finding the right balance, the right level of discomfort. You do need to stretch yourself. You do need to feel discomfort. It is impossible to achieve the aim without suffering. Like on Robert Fripp's Exposure album, there's that quote. So it's completely true here, right? If you want to change your life, it will suck for a while. It will feel terrible for a while. Again, all that's going on here is that you feel like you've gotten new proof to prove that you're this bad loser or whatever it is, but it's just the old story, and it feels worse. But again, you just need to pace yourself. You just need to find that sweet spot and be aware that you need to take little breaks, and aware that it's okay to fail. I mean, it's not the end of the world. Come on, it's okay. You will probably fail. You will fall down. You will get back up. It's all good, right? That's how you change yourself, right? Be good, just be the good parent that many of us have never had. You see. So yeah. Okay. So what can you do about this? Is it even possible to gain a lot of resilience? Yeah. As I said, you just need to train. You just be aware that you're telling yourself a story, that it feels very real because the emotions are so intense and you have had so much reinforcement, and yeah, maybe your life seems to be falling apart. But usually your life falls apart because it's actually trying to help you make that old story fall apart so that it gets you back to your better life. This, but it still sucks. I think that's about it. If possible, yeah. So as I said, I suggested to Carl to go see, like, for instance, I'm a big fan of somatic experiencing because it's helped me a lot, and that I'm not a trained somatic experience practitioner, so I can't help with that. I could help a little because I have some tips, but you do need some expert help for the physical part of it because it's quite a topic, but it's doable. But I do offer some coaching with the narrative part because, again, I did it for 20 years. I know how hard it is. I've fallen in pretty much all the traps you can imagine. I've fallen into it. So hence the Optima Method. When I was really going into when I was really in the really pits of the whole thing, I did. I told myself I will take notes, and once I'm out, I will help people. So that's why I have a coaching program, and that's why I'm here. So if you want to know more, drop me an email. I offer a free 20-minute consultation to see if right now I'm a good option for you. You can ask any question you like. And if you just want to book a session, there's also a link in the description. Just book it, and I'll be happy to talk. And as I have said before, and I will say again, it has truly never been more important for you to live your best life. We just need it so much. Do. Take care of yourself and get back to living like your dreams and your life of wonder and beauty and joy. And we need it. The world needs it. And take care. Hang in there. I'll see you soon.